Good morning. Everyone's already over here communicating and commenting. I love it. Good morning, Gigi and Karen and Jenny and Emily and Alex. Um, I come with a disclaimer. I have allergies really bad right now, and I hope and pray that I do not go into a sneezing fit because it's high likelihood. Oh, Gigi, it's your son's birthday. Bittersweet. You know, it's such a, I remember thinking as moms, as parents, as healthy, reasonable parents, regardless of your gender, we want to enjoy every single moment. But when you are in this type of battle, the other side of that coin is that you want to press fast forward and get them out of the system. It's kind of the reality that so many of us are facing. It's I'm thankful that very few people can understand this dynamic. And the reality is 15 is that's a difficult age in itself. If you just put a 15-year-old child in a healthy home with two functioning, semi-normal parents, and then you add in things like the pandemic. I mean, that in itself is a difficult scenario. 15 is hard. And I remember people looking at me and going, these are the best years of your life. And I was like, oh God, that's terrifying because it doesn't feel like the best time of my life. And if this is the best, I'm not really excited about the future. And then you add in the pandemic and the state of our world and all of these other things, and it's just I have a lot of compassion for teenagers in these situations. So happy birthday to your son, Gigi. Couple of things. I'm actually going to start reading a fine print disclaimer so that and hopefully one day I'll memorize it. Oh, yeah. No, and he's very much a victim of this as well. Gigi said his depression and anxiety are crippling due to the narcissistic abuse and the fallout. So, yeah, I think that many people can echo that scenario. I hear it a lot, and my heart breaks for these kids. My little fine print disclaimer, I'm not an attorney. I cannot give you legal advice. I'm happy to open communication on the difficult topic of a narcissist or a toxic individual in the family court system, in a child custody battle, or in a shared parenting situation. And I share my own personal experience as a pro se litigant against a narcissist, in which I successfully protected my children. And by sharing my story, I hope that, even if you walk away with a couple more tools in your toolbox, that's really what it's all about. And how to help our kids navigate this to the best of our ability. There is no rule book. There should be, there is not. And so we're all in this together. Thank you for joining me. I want to remind everyone for the month of May, in honor of Mother's Day, all of the online courses on the website, onemomsbattle.com, are 30% off. So it'll automatically calculate that when you go to check out for Mother's Day. On our Instagram page, Laska, my trusty sidekick, is doing daily giveaways. So make sure you are on the One Mom's Battle Instagram page. And she'll be raffling things off and collecting names to send to me at the end of the week. So that's exciting. Happy Mother's Day. I know that this can be a challenging time for many of us. A lot of people were raised in dysfunction, and so Mother's Day is not flowers and, happiness. I know I personally struggled with it for many years before I became a mom because my own mom was so unhealthy that it was never a positive day for me. And it was, and once she took her life, or she died of a drug overdose in 2001. It took away all hope. That was the one thing I had clung to for so many years, is that she would get better. She would, and that day I thought I had prepared myself for that phone call, and you just can't. And the bigger issue for me was hope. It's completely gone now. And so I know that in the survivor community, I hear a lot from, people who were raised in really unhealthy environments. So we were groomed to go into these types of relationships. And so my heart is with you, whether Mother's Day is a positive day for you or a hurtful, hard day for you. My heart is with you, and happy Mother's Day to you, regardless of your circumstances. Good question, Gigi. Do not take any of my online courses. If you are registered for my upcoming training, coach training program, because you're going to get all of those. I teach them in a little bit different format, but it's a lot of the same material, just presented differently. So do not, do not sign up. But Gigi, or anyone who is in my coach training program, if you want access to all of my online courses, just email me. If you want kind of a head start on some of the course material, I'm happy to share that with you now. You know my email address if you are in my coach training program, which starts next week. I think next week. Yeah, about a little over a week. I wanted to quickly, the Duggar family situation. It's I'm going through EMDR right now to kind of go through a lot of the trauma that I have with my ex-husband's family. And there are so many similarities to what is happening in that family right now, the 19 and counting. I've never actually watched that show, but right down to the age of I think his name is Josh, Duggar's victim, 18 months old. I don't know if he had child sex abuse images. That was the age of my ex-brother-in-law's alleged youngest victims. The cult-like mentality, a lot of people are bashing his wife. And I want to say I have a tremendous amount of compassion for her. She is uneducated. She was raised in a cult-like environment. And, if you told me their marriage was prearranged, I don't know anything about these people, it wouldn't surprise me. This is what she has known, and she's a victim in this as well. I cringe at some of the comments about his wife, and we'll see how it unfolds, but I'll tell you, it's been very triggering for me because a lot of the work that I'm doing in therapy is about the trauma that I had from my ex-mother-in-law, and that, I refuse to continue drinking the Kool-Aid and mold myself into her replica. It is very much cult-like. The healing, it's almost like going through therapy to extricate yourself from a cult or the trauma that a cult has caused. And it's I've been reading some of the things. For those of you who don't know, my ex-brother-in-law is about to face trial for the most horrific child sex abuse allegations that you don't even want to know the details. It is triggering, disturbing, truly the worst of the worst in that category of child sex abuse. And he's just flailing. It's like the Ted Bundy of the pedophile world, where he is self-represented. But I was reading a document from my ex-mother-in-law that he submitted yesterday in preparation for the trial, and I almost couldn't believe when I read something that she wrote, and it was this poor me victim card, and she wrote, I find myself terrified when a car comes down the driveway because their house had been raided, because when you live in a child porn factory, police come in with warrants. And so she said, I find myself terrified when a car comes down the driveway and jumping each time a phone rings or there's a knock on the door. I guess this is just our new reality, sadly. And I'm thinking, welcome to my life. Welcome to what your family has done to me. That is a really good descriptor of how so many of us live every day of our lives. So if you are also dealing with toxic, I say a lot of us are not just going through a divorce or a custody battle with one narcissist. It is like an entire sick family that targets you, and you're up against a team of, it's a way when they are able to come together, even if they're super dysfunctional and fight all the time during your relationship. When you are a target and they are as thick as thieves, and they come together and they target you as a group, and it's a way for them to forget about their own dysfunction and unhealthiness or pretend it doesn't exist. And it's a really sick dynamic, and if you've experienced that, I'm sorry. I get it. So with that said, let's jump into our questions for the day, and always keep an eye on the chat comments. There are some very, very knowledgeable people in the group. I will never claim to have all the answers. Some of them actually do. So somebody writes in, and this is a common scenario that I hear. CPS or DCSF, Child Welfare Services, continues to fail my children. What does it take to get a founded report? I am desperate. This is a really big topic, and it's one that a lot of us have dealt with. My heart actually broke this week when a mom that I work with emailed me and, basically said, even with all of the CPS evidence, the court still failed my kids. But then on the flip side of that, I have another client who's become a friend, and CPS is protecting her daughter this week. And so it's really all over the place. It's very much like, just like the family court system is a broken institution, CPS, in my opinion, is more broken. I think that agency needs to be completely scrubbed and reconstructed. They are failing kids every day, but every once in a while you get the rare unicorn in the CPS system who probably newer into it, and maybe a lot of them do get into it for the right reasons, and they burn out, or they become calloused to the insane things that they see or hear. And unfortunately, when you're in the family court system and dealing with that added component of CPS, they cannot, as soon as they see child custody, they cannot close your case fast enough. There is this, almost like the bias in the family court system that moms make up sexual abuse claims to get a leg up in custody. Same thing, same bias that CPS has. They believe that parents, it's just two people who can't get along, that they're using the CPS system to get ahead in their custody battle. And when they're leading with that bias, kids are being failed. And I see it all the time. For me, CPS, the only hope I ever put into that system was to create an additional paper trail to back up what I was saying, the patterns of behavior, the concerns that I have that I was putting in front of the court. It was kind of like another layer of that from neutral third parties. And one of the things that I learned, when they mark it unfounded, which is 99% of the time from what I see from my vantage point, it doesn't mean that the incident did not happen. And I learned that years ago when an attorney was grilling a CPS worker on the stand, and he made her walk him through what unfounded actually means. Because I feel like there's a huge disconnect between CPS and the court. The court sees unfounded and they think, well, it didn't happen. But what the attorney had the CPS worker walk him through is that, yes, they believe the incident did happen. However, the child was now in the hands of the safe parent, and so they marked it as unfounded and closed it. My own case, I could give you multiple examples of that. One time, my ex-husband left my little girl right after she got out of the hospital with having horrible seizures and instructions never to leave her unattended. We were even supposed to sleep with her at night. He left her in a car for 45 minutes unattended while he watched a sports event at the local country club. And my older daughter came home and reported it right away. Literally opened the car door, got in. Mom, Dad did something really bad. He left her in the car, blah, blah, blah. I couldn't believe my ears. We were in the middle of a child custody evaluation at that point. I went home. I emailed the evaluator. CPS was called by the evaluator. He admitted to leaving her in the car. Obviously, he recreated the story, so it was a very short period of time in his recreated reality. But he admitted to the CPS worker that she was sleeping in a car unattended and that he kept going out and checking on her. So there's no denying that happened. They marked it as unfounded. And I do believe that hurt my case when I put it in front of the court because it was unfounded. So there's a huge, disconnect. Don't give up. Would I put my hope in CPS? No, but every once in a while I do hear stories where people get a caseworker who cares, who is trauma informed, who doesn't believe that you're trying to use this to get ahead in your custody battle. They are out there. But would I put all of my faith into it? No. And there were other examples of things that I did. My kids would come home with horrible diaper rashes, sunburns. I would take them to the pediatrician if it was really bad. And I would say, I know you can't cure this, but these are ongoing issues and I'm just at a loss for what to do. If you have any suggestions, what I could be doing on my end to help them, to protect them. So, and then you have a whole nother neutral third party who are documenting the neglect and things like that. So it's all about forming a picture over time. That's a lot of the areas where I was successful in my case. And I didn't set out and go, okay, this is going to be my strategy. It was authentically my truth. I was desperate for people to listen, for people to protect my kids. You just want to make sure that you're navigating it the right way and always check with your attorney. Hopefully you have an attorney who is knowledgeable in these issues. So my heart goes out to you if you are dealing with CPS because it's a horrible system. But again, read comments because there's always other angles, other input, and I very much appreciate the insight from our followers. Number 2, my ex-husband continues to make decisions without including me. We have joint legal and physical custody. So that's not a super common scenario, but it does happen. And if I were standing in that person's shoes, I would be documenting it strategically with my communication. So, for example, if I found out that my ex-husband had taken my daughter into the pediatrician for a hearing test, and I knew nothing about it. My daughter gets in the car, says she was at the doctor. I email. I don't love the phone because it's harder to prove. It's very, this is a he said, she said world when it comes to family court. And so I would probably email the doctor's office and say, hey, my daughter mentioned that she was there today. I'm not sure what it was about. Can you share that with me? So getting it documented, getting it in writing, and then making sure that the doctor's office has a copy of the court order on file if this is an ongoing problem that shows both parents need to be involved. The unfortunate part, and something I hear about a lot, is that some providers don't want to be involved. They don't get it, they're not equipped to deal with it, and so they end up dropping your child as a patient if these issues continue to happen. And especially, if they don't know who the healthy party is and they feel like they're constantly in the middle, or they don't want to have to go to court. There are a lot of people who are really afraid of being called into court. Rightfully so. But unfortunately, these situations do affect kids. And so, but there's another area to document. If you're able to show my daughter got kicked out of dance or my son got kicked out of dance because the other parent is constantly harassing or making unilateral decisions without involving me, and then I have to get involved, and then it creates chaos. Showing patterns of behavior. That's what so much of this is about. And unfortunately, there's no quick answer to it. It's the ultra marathon mindset, keeping in mind that the unhealthy, toxic parent usually trains for a sprint, a 5K. That's an analogy I use a lot. And so continuing to document these things and build your case that this person's constantly in violation of the court order. And for me, anywhere I can make it extract myself from the conflict and say, Your Honor, he has no regard for the court orders. You ordered this on this date. He's violated it 4 different times. I've, submitted the evidence in as exhibit whatever, and make it personal, because judges, family court professionals, a lot of them have really big egos. And when you can take yourself out of it and make it a battle of the egos, or that one feels that he's above the judge or her, it can be really helpful. So that's what I found in my case. But again, so Alex says, what about I have sole legal, but I have no contact order and can't communicate except through attorneys? I think I missed the initial. If you can't, you're prohibited from you have to follow your court order, and that's a unique situation. So, so much of what we talk about, I try to make it as general as possible. However, there are situations where you have a no contact order, you have a restraining order. So you're going to have to, take what's applicable to you, and some of it may not be, and always defer to your attorney for any new decision or new strategy or new angle that you want to explore, because ultimately your attorney is your voice and your advocate in the courtroom. And so they have to be a part of your team and a part of any decisions that are made. Third question, we were just ordered into a 50-50 custody split and my children are suffering. Is there anything I can do? It's a hard one because, there's going to be different scenarios. A 2-year-old struggling, that rises to, it's not okay for any child to struggle, but The younger the child, the more in tune with that we have to be. Um, and so, first of all, I don't believe in 50-50, um, except in rare circumstances where two healthy parents have determined that that's what's best for their family. A great example would be my husband. I'm remarried. When I met Glenn, they still had one minor child who was a teenager at the time. And they pretty much, they had a schedule and it was 50-50, but he pretty much dictated where he was for the most part, and bounced back and forth. That is a situation where they were listening to him. They were in tune with his needs, and but the type of person we're dealing with, that's not what this is about. The kids are weaponized, the kids are used as pawns. And so in a high conflict situation, I am absolutely against 50-50. Um, and kids, depending on their age, are going to have different struggles with this. But they're essentially living out of a backpack. They don't have a home base. And so, yeah, I'd want to check their pulse if they were not struggling with that type of situation. I know how I feel after traveling, to where you're just so disoriented and, don't know where your toothbrush is or whatnot. It's a horrible feeling when that becomes your life. And so, continuing to document, there are going to be some things that the court's just going to accept as the fallout of the situation. And that's where a lot of the victim blaming mentality comes in. I share this. My judge said, this, I did not choose to marry this person. You did. You chose to have children with him. You can't expect me to fix your problems. And that's the mentality of the court system in general. So if we're talking about, a 9-year-old who is struggling, document those things. Document, the decline in the grades, or the increase in anxiety, or regression, or behavioral issues. Anywhere you can pull in a neutral third party to further document those things. If we're dealing with a 2-year-old, that's where you're really going to have to lean into the pediatrician. And maybe the pediatrician recommends getting a play therapist on board, to help fill the child's toolbox, to help them navigate this change. That could be another layer of documentation. If the play therapist is good and trauma informed and understands what you're up against, having another party saying, no, this child is really, really struggling, can help you when you go back into court and try to protect your kids. So, and then there are going to be times where it's just, unfortunately, radical acceptance has to come into play. If you are in a very 50-50 system, which most of them are, but some of them are more solid. Arkansas, unfortunately, is literally a 50-50 state. And so then it's radical acceptance, managing our expectations, and making sure that our child's toolbox is so full, and showing up and being the healthy parent during your 50% of the time, so that they have a rock. Because as we talk about a lot, a child only needs one healthy role model or adult in their life to come through these things unscathed. Um, I've had, when I start with a new therapist and I tell them about my own childhood, and they'll look at me and go, who was your rock? How are you okay? There had to be somebody in your life. And for me, that was my aunt. And a lot of my life, she lived 2,000 miles away. But just having that check-in point and, somebody solid and stable for a child can make all the difference. And so that's why it's so important for us to keep the oxygen mask on tight, so we can show up and be that healthy parent for our kids. Gigi says, side note, and I haven't been keeping up with all the comments. Good morning, Dina. And Sylvia. Gigi says, side note, the amount of men using 50-50 custody as a badge of honor on dating websites is sickening. Wow. And it's one of the descriptors that I use, whether you're dealing with a dad or a mom, when we see really unhealthy parents, they're usually fighting for 50-50 as a badge of honor, so they can go around telling all their friends, I have 50-50 custody, because then they're insinuating that they're a good person. Because to anyone who's never been through the court system, they see 50-50 and go, wow, must be a great guy, great woman, if the court gave them half custody. So, it's used as a badge of honor, a way to create their image. It's used for control. It's used to win. They know that going after the kids is the number one way to hurt you, and it's financially motivated. My ex-husband would have rather paid a nanny to raise my kids than give me an ounce of child support. He would have paid a nanny more than the court-ordered child support just to hurt me, and that's absolute fact. And it's the reality for so many of us. But thank you all so much for joining me today with Coffee with Tina. I love the collective wisdom in the group and seeing all of your faces week after week. And I see a lot of new names today, so thank you so much for joining us, and have a wonderful Mother's Day, whatever that means for you. Maybe it just means you practice extra self-care and show yourself the same compassion that you show to other people. So take care. Happy Mother's Day, everyone.